What up, y'all? So today I'm going to be reacting to a old video. This video is like 4 or 5 years old, and it's from a INFP. They were talking about how they were tired of the intuitive bias in the MBTI community. Um, but it's funny because a lot of the like genuine intuitives, people who, so I know some INFJs, they're tired of the intuitive bias too, and they're intuitives. That's because they're balanced people. And I know one in particular that watched my videos. I know personally in real life. You seeing this? You know, you know what I'm talking about. But people who are genuinely intuitive, they get tired of the bias too. They get tired of all the BS that goes on that I'm talking about a lot. But given that I'm a censor, sometimes people can try to make it seem like poke holes or attempt to poke holes, even though they can't really, in some of the things I say, because I'm a censor. Of course, I'm going to not like it. But if intuitive is saying it, that makes it even more prevalent that it's a problem, right? But that's not the only reason why I'm reacting to this. But I just thought it was a good video. It really, a lot of things she said lines up with what I say. Part of the reason, this reminds me of why I can get along with NFPs, because while they have a completely different process towards their conclusions than I do, they can oftentimes have very similar conclusions to me, which is very interesting. But let's go ahead and get to it. Um, so, yeah, she's an INFP. So I don't know how she's come to the conclusion, but given that she understands Myers-Briggs quite well, she's likely not mistyping. And I can tell she's more likely an INFP. But anyway, let's get to it.
Alright, so this video is mostly going to be about the problem with intuitive bias that exists online in certain MBTI communities and websites. And while this problem isn't nearly as prevalent as it was several years ago, it still exists, and I still think that there's this.
And the funny thing is, this is a 5-year-old video, 4-year-old video. It still exists today too. It's not outdated. It hasn't really changed that much within the past couple of years, partially because we had the COVID thing going on. So that slowed some things down. And it almost felt like after COVID was over, we kind of had to reset. So take away what? How long did COVID last? Like 3 years or so? Take away 3 years from that, roughly. Um, but yeah, she says it used to be more of a problem some years ago, which does make sense because based on my memory, um, if this is like 4 or 5 years ago, I'm guessing this is what, 2021, right? Am I doing my math right? Yeah, about 2021 ish. So maybe some years before that, yeah, it was more of a problem for sure. While it was more of a problem, the YouTube Myers-Briggs community wasn't really that bad. From my memory, it was cool on YouTube, but I guess it kind of spread to YouTube eventually. But yeah.
Underlying perceived sense of elitism that exists in some places by some people who call themselves intuitive types, whether they are those types or not. There's this, they perceive themselves to be.
Hmm. Notice how she says perceive themselves to be, given, and what she's pretty much saying is a lot of those people are mistyped. Don't you guys hear me say that all the time? Oh man, I knew I didn't sound crazy because nobody's been talking about it lately. I know I didn't sound crazy. And this person here said they're an INFP. So yeah.
Smarter or more special or more creative or whatever, just because they're an intuitive type. And this is
Exactly.
incorrect.
And they do this, sometimes they'll do this, but they're not going to admit that they're doing it. They're pretending like they're not doing it while they're doing it. So it can be very subtle. It's not always in your face because people don't want to, people are fake. I'm going to tell you that right now. Not going to actually, sometimes people are not going to actually say what they really want to say. They, they dress it up in certain ways.
Because, first of all, your MBTI type is not who you are as a person.
Exactly.
And just because you are a certain type
Misconception
doesn't
for a lot of
make you a
beginners.
smart person. It doesn't make you a creative person. Those are individual attributes.
Exactly. And don't you guys hear me say this all the time? Your Myers-Briggs type doesn't define you as a person. That's all up to you. If you're not doing anything in real life to prove that you're like that, You don't have the right to go around acting like you are just because you read a description somewhere that says that. You have to actually prove it in real life. The whole point of them telling you is so that you can try to live up to that, because it's showing you what you could potentially be. Some of these people read this type of stuff and they automatically think they're better than other people. That's a big problem. And then they latch onto intuitive types, but to do this, because in real life they're not actually doing anything to prove it.
that can be in somebody who's of any of the 16 types. So
Exactly.
that's kind of what this video is going to be about, is pretty much just intuitive bias and how there's still this tendency sometimes to disregard the sensing types and kind of belittle them sometimes. So yeah,
Exactly,
that's mostly what this video is.
bro. And it's funny because I had a couple comments trying to make it seem like this doesn't go on. It's easy to say when you're the one that's benefiting from it. You know what I mean? If you're an intuitive type and your type is always getting praised, and you're not a sensor type, you're not the one that's getting belittled all the time as a sensor, it's easy for you to say. But when you're a sensor and you're going around and you're seeing this type of stuff all the time, yeah, like you're going to have a problem with it. But it's easy for you to say when you're not the one that has to deal with it. I've had some intuitives try to make it seem like I'm exaggerating. Yeah, you're going to say that because you're not the one that has to deal with it. But yeah, exactly.
Is going to be about. And like I said, MBTI communities, they seem to have this bias towards favoring intuitive types.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think this comes from some websites' descriptions of the types. For example, the 16 personalities test in the first place.
Yeah, 16 personalities, bro. Given that that's the most popular website, that creates a lot of the problems because, like, if you get somebody like me, and if I go and look at 16 personalities, I can find it useful because I can see what they're trying to say, and I can see the full premise of what they're trying to say. I can see it from both sides. Now, if a beginner just goes and that's the only thing they see, they're going to think that the 16 personalities is the only perspective on Myers-Briggs that matters, and they're going to take everything they see on there and just use that as reference points. You know what I'm saying? So, and then you probably got intuitives making all the, most of the descriptions are made by intuitives. Of course, they're going to have a natural bias. You know what I'm saying? It's easy to have a natural bias towards your own type or own something that's similar to you.
Test in and of itself has a very strong intuitive bias to it. And the
Yeah.
descriptions that,
Like I was saying too, the tests are made for you to type as intuitive because they make all the ordinary, boring things seem like sensor things. They manipulate the questioning so that you would feel like a piece of shit if you chose the answer that would lead to you being a censor. It's like, of course, they overly simplify and they make it so that you're like, of course I'm not like that. Of course I'm not going to say um, I'm shallow, or it's not like that direct, but they make it sound bad so that you have no choice but to pick the one that's going to point to you being intuitive. People like act like these tests are like wizard is some type of wizardry or something like that, like it's magic, like it's psychic, because they don't understand how these tests work. Somebody like me, I understand how the tests work. If I really wanted to, I could go make my own test. A lot of these tests are letter based too. They're not really, most of the tests are also not really based on cognitive functions. Letters, if you guys don't know, letters are more shallow than cognitive functions. Cognitive function is a little more specified and it's deeper than the letters. But even if you take a cognitive function test, you could mistype easily because a lot of it is just dependent on, if you don't know why they're asking you the questions, you just answer them. You could be answering them any kind of way for any reason. You could be answering it that way because you might be in a bad mood that day, and then you come out as a completely different type because of the mood you're in that day. Even though that's not what type is really based on. People think this stuff is just like the test is just like it's a some type of clairvoyance or something like that. Bro, these tests are made by people. Like, come on, bro, these tests are not God. Like, these people think these tests are God or something. Like they're just gonna tell you all the answers you need. No, bro, you have all the answers you need. You just have to actually do some type of um do some type of research and spend some time learning about the cognitive functions on your own time. You know what I'm saying? Stop picking the lazy route. The lazy route is always going to be to take the test. Anybody can go take a test, 10, 20-minute test, bro. Test is not, it's not the core of the whole thing. It's just, it's made for you if you just start getting into it. It gives you a little bit of a starting point, but you're supposed to like learn about the cognitive functions from there so you can figure out what your type actually is and figure out if the test is correct. Now, I've had people take the test and I've actually coached them on how to answer the question so that they get the most accurate answer. And when I do that, most of the time the test will be right, but that's only after I've coached the person and told them, hey, when you're answering the question, this is how you should be thinking about it. Yeah, they usually get the right answer or something very close. But yeah, bro, I've done this with, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I used to go on dates, I've been on a lot of dates, been on probably hundreds, if not probably thousands. I don't know how many dates I've been on, honestly. But I would do this on a lot of dates, um, with girls and stuff like that. Um, and this is how I was actually building. I was using this as like a testing sample size. I would do it as a kind of fun social thing, but I would explain it to them properly, and then I would kind of coach them on it. And this is how I was able to get quite a lot of insight on certain things, um, as well as far as like how the tests work and like. But it didn't even take that. The tests are not really that complicated, to understand how they're made and what they're going at. If you know cognitive functions or if you know how the whole system works.
A lot of these really, really popular places have for intuitive types. They're a lot more cool than the sensing type descriptions. And so people may
Exactly.
want to be an intuitive type.
And it's
So
all an illusion. They make them sound cooler. It's not because they're actually cooler. They make them sound cooler. Like, and with knowing that, I don't want to be an intuitive. I'm actually pretty glad that I'm a sensor. Not that I'm not saying even that. Of course, I wouldn't want to be an intuitive. I'm not even saying that. I used to think I was intuitive. Actually, I got mistyped as INTP. But at the same time, it doesn't matter either way. What I would have been, I would still be happy with it. I would just look at the strengths of whatever I end up being, and I'll be cool with it. And eventually, I get used to it, and that's how I approached it. I didn't care what I would have came out as. I always, when I first was trying to figure it out, I was always looking at it as being prepared for worst case scenario. Like, let's say if I just in case I end up getting a type I don't like, I'm gonna just make sure I'm okay with it. It could just be the raw truth. I'm gonna just try to accept it for what it is.
that's one factor. And then there's also kind of the obvious thing that the people who are interested in MBTI in the first place, I think, are more likely to be intuitive types just because the
That's
nature of
true.
this, it's a personality system, it's abstract.
While that is true, plenty of sensor types probably would be more interested in it if the sensor types didn't get shitted on so much. Um, Eventually, like sensor types will try to be interested in it, but then they just be like, "Bro, what's the point? This is a waste of my time." Also, sensors were more practical by nature, so there'll be a less likelihood it'll be less likely that we would be into stuff like this. But at the same time, it's not impossible. There's plenty of sensor types that would be into this type of stuff. So if it wasn't so toxic, I'll tell you that.
Um, Psychology and all of those things, generally speaking,
Yeah,
are
that's true.
more attractive to intuitive types than sensing.
Yeah, you always like counselors and stuff and psychologists more than likely will probably be an intuitive because they will probably be more interested in psychology. Now it's not that black and white. There's plenty of sensor types that could be interested in it, myself included. I'm a sensor and I'm interested in psychology. Um, but yeah, that's true for sure.
Types. So it's the same thing as people who are mechanics and construction workers, more likely they're sensing types
True,
than
true,
intuitive types. And that's a lot more practical and useful than MBTI, frankly. So
true.
it says nothing.
Very, very true. The way I look at things that are more abstract because it's my tertiary function is intuitive function. I'm going to look at these abstract sort of subjects as something I do for fun, kind of, and a hobby, or I'm going to find a way to bring practical uses to it, so that I can prioritize it. But I look at this. This is just pure fun to me. I like Myers Briggs because it's fun. I find it fun and interesting.
Nothing about either type's value or anything else. It's just, that's kind of the way it is. So that's another factor. And there's this whole other thing of sometimes people still, they try to determine, oh, what type is the best? What type is the worst? And that whole question is just a false premise,
It
because
is, yeah.
no type is the best, no type is the worst.
I've gotten that so much from people, from beginners, and like a lot of dates I've been on too. When I bring it up to them, they start to ask these type of questions, and of course they're beginners. I'm not going to be mad about that type of question from beginner. I explain it to them like it's no good or bad. It's all on the same playing field, and it's all up to the individual whether they're a good or bad version of that type. That's why it doesn't matter what type you are. You know what I mean? At all. Like it really doesn't matter.
Each type has strengths and weaknesses that are balanced out
Exactly.
by other types. That's the whole point, is kind of recognizing that certain types of people have these strengths and then they have these weaknesses, and then other people are really, really strong in those areas, and it balances each other out. And sometimes this
Exactly.
shows up when you look at what types are supposedly most compatible with each other. For example, sometimes INFPs are listed as being a good match for ESTJs. And obviously these two types are very, very different, but they would kind of balance each other out in a
Yeah, it's true. It's kind of true, but there's so many different compatibility formulas and theories out there that it's kind of all over the place. I mean, for the reasons that they tend to give for why certain types can get along, it's like, okay, but it really all depends. There's so many different factors that can go into that. It's like everybody has their own compatibility theory. I don't personally, I mean, the one thing I wouldn't use Myers-Briggs for is for compatibility. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use it at all, but you shouldn't base your who you date off of Myers-Briggs, because it's so many factors that can go into that. Sometimes they'll say a certain two types should not date, but then in real life, they date all the time, and it's not actually a bad match. So it's like, yeah, man, like you shouldn't use it for that reason.
relationship where they're both mature people. So
Yeah, it's true.
that's kind of the whole point, is everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and that's
Exactly.
kind of the beauty of it, is that everyone has value.
Yeah.
So, and
It's not that sensors don't have value and intuitive do have value. Everybody has value. And I felt like, to me, it should be common sense, but I do try to empathize with beginners because it's been so long since I've been a beginner. Sometimes it's, hard for me to understand that point of view. But yeah.
and another thing that I've noticed is on certain typing websites, for example, I think it's called Personality Database, which is a really useful website, and it's fun to poke around on there and stuff. But I think there definitely exists a tendency for people to type celebrities and other public figures that they like as an intuitive type.
Exactly.
And
Another point I've been making for the longest. People do that so often. They'll type all the people they like as intuitive and all the people they don't like as censors. All the main characters get typed as intuitive, but all the like side characters they get typed as censors. They do this all the time. Personality database, I believe she's talking about the website where they vote about what type is which. That's a big hit or miss. A lot of that has to do with personal perception of certain types. Could be very wrong if if the popular perception of certain types isn't accurate because of the information that's put out. It's a very much hit or miss. It's not like a valid source of, oh, being able to tell what type is which all the time. And I can say that because I've been in the Myers Briggs for a very long time. I lost count how many years, but I know I started in like November, December of 2008. I remember specifically. I was in high school I was a freshman in high school, and I was on winter break when I got into it. I remember specifically.
those that they don't like as a sensing type. Still, even though, like, just because you're intuitive doesn't make you a good person, obviously. Just because you're a sensor
Exactly.
doesn't make you a bad person or a
Exactly.
boring person, obviously.
This has gotten to the point like there's certain characters that are obvious INFJs, but they never get typed as INFJ. I'll talk about that in a different video, but this is another problem because people don't actually have a valid um, view of what INFJ actually looks like. They have this like sort of inflated sense of what they look like. So they might type out the main characters, but these they type out the main characters as INFJ, but these people that I would say are INFJs, they're actually very good characters, but they don't get typed as INFJ for some reason. It's very weird.
So that's something that you kind of have to, if you're ever on one of those websites and you're curious about what type somebody is, you have to kind of keep that in mind.
Exactly.
So, and I think as a whole, kind of where this issue comes from is because there's a car driving around in circles in the parking lot behind me, which is fun. Um, so the MBTI system, just in general, I think it might attract people who feel a little bit different and kind of like they're not normal and they might have trouble fitting in and they might feel like they're outcasts. And so if they come up with a personality type as, for example, like, I'm not saying this as a bad thing, but if they take a test and it gives them INTJ as a result, and then they read the description, and first of all, a lot of the time it's called mastermind, which
Yeah.
just kind of fuels the
Exactly.
ego there a little bit. But
Exactly. People do this all the time, and to add to that point, somebody can feel like an outcast for any reason. It doesn't have anything to do with your Myers-Briggs type. You could be any type, any sensing type, and you could feel like an outcast for any reason. You know, people like people who maybe sensing types could come in and think that, oh, I'm an outcast, I must be an intuitive. Like that can happen a lot too.
and then they read the description, it gives them validation
Exactly.
about why they don't necessarily have a good time fitting in or have an easy time with social
And
situations.
some of these people like have victim mentalities too. They make it seem like they want to blame all their problems on sensing types, and then they want to blame all their types on ESTJs. Like they bossed out an ESTJ that was mean to them, which they might not even been an ESTJ. It's just that you want to like all the people that are bad, you want to call them SJs or STJs. You know, I've like, and the thing is, I've met bad ESTJs myself. I've met some really bad people that are ESTJs, ICJ, but I'm not going to sit up and look at the entire type as bad just because I met a couple of bad ESTJs. Um, and I've had some bosses that were bad, horrible bosses that were ESTJs that were just, you know, but I'm not going to go around and look at ESTJs as bad just because I had a couple bad experiences with one person, a couple, well, not even one person, a couple people of a certain type. I don't look at it like that. I'm not going to suddenly not like a certain type because of that. Like that's why it's so bad when y'all do that type of stuff, man.
Um, but instead of using that as, oh, okay, well, this explains why I might have these issues, instead of using that as a platform to kind of maybe improve on those things or recognize that those are weaknesses and try to do something about it, they just
Exactly.
use it as an excuse and just kind of.
Excuse. Exactly. They do that too. Always 1,000 excuses. You know, also like um it kind of goes in like the excuses people use when they're like I'm trying to make it seem like there's no intuitive bias and like, oh, we're just doing that because nah, bro. Like
Still, they still view themselves as apart from others instead of, you know, using it as a way to improve
exactly.
themselves.
That's what you're
I'm not
supposed to do.
picking on INTJs. I just think that that, for example, is a really prevalent situation online that I've seen.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, there's this stereotype that the SFJ types are boring and nosy and they're the mom types. I mean,
This is why when I put ISFJ high on my masculinity list, people were acting confused because they're going off the stereotype of them being the mothers and shit, like being like um, all SFJs. You think the typical mom stereotype or the typical aunt stereotype or whatever, like grandma baking cookies. That's why people were so confused, but they didn't see the other side of it. Like they fit whatever role in society they're supposed to fit, gender wise. Like if they're a man, they're going to act real masculine. If they're a woman, they're going to act really, motherly and feminine, whatever you want to call it. They know how to fit that very, just like how ICJs tend to be called duty fulfillers. Very similar for the ISFJ. ISFJs are duty fulfillers as well, but they're more like looking at, what role they're playing in people's lives versus like STJs. I mean, ISTJs is more like what what is my duty to fulfill? Like what job am I supposed to be doing and how am I supposed to execute that job the best way and fit into the role of whatever job I have.
I think that they are the mom types, but they can be very caring and good communicators and great teachers as well. And
Exactly.
certainly not boring people just
They're
because they're
not.
an ESFJ, for example.
SJs are not boring. It's just like all the people you think of are boring, you just type them as SJ by default. They might not even be an SJ, you know? You just don't, like people have a very shallow, they think they never want to put any type of thought into any of the sensing types, especially the SJs when it comes to trying to understand them. But they want to put all the thought into all the intuitive things they have to do with intuition to understand it. Because they just write it off as simple. But when you do that, that puts you in a situation where you don't understand it. You're just assuming you understand it and you're being ignorant. People do this all the time. They try to simplify introverted sensing as memory or something like that. Everybody has memory. Introverted sensing isn't just memory. Like they always do this, man. I'm telling you.
So, anyway, this is kind of just a brief overview about why it's important to try to not be biased when it comes to MBTI and to recognize that I think this bias just exists in the community as a whole, and
Yeah.
to keep that in mind when you're
And it's coming from an intuitive. Okay, so it lets me know that all the things I've been seeing, I'm not the only one that's seeing it.
reading about things or watching videos, even mine, for example. I have bias, everyone has bias, but
Yeah,
and also just remember that your MBTI type doesn't define you as a person.
it does not. Yeah,
I mean,
for
for
sure.
example, I'm pretty sure that I am an INFP, but there have been people who have commented on here that they think I'm another type, such as an ISFP, which is fine. I mean, it's entirely possible that I am that type.
Nah, just based on what I've seen, she's definitely not an ISFP. For sure.
But it doesn't, it doesn't affect me like how I view myself. It doesn't chip away at my identity, I guess. And so, yeah. Anyway, this is kind of a really rambly video, so I'm going to wrap it up. So thank you for watching. If you made it this far, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please let me know. And I will see you later. Bye.
Okay. Cool. So, I don't want y'all seeing that. Anyways, um, yeah, bro. Um, what more can I say? She pretty much talked about all the stuff I've been also bringing up too. Um, so yeah, man, intuitive bias, like for it to be, that's about 4 or 5 year old video. So it lines up. I mean, intuitive bias was going on back then, just like how it is now. Not quite as bad, but about as, it's not that, it hadn't got much better, maybe a tiny bit better, but not really that much better. Um, Still a bunch of people getting into Myers-Briggs, coming across it for the wrong reasons. Um, it attracts narcissistic people. And the people who are narcissistic always want to be an intuitive because intuitives are more rare, more special, very narcissistic to want to be in the Myers-Briggs just because of that. You know, it's supposed to be a tool that you use to develop yourself and to strive towards something. Like when you see the best version of whatever type you are, you're supposed to strive to that. You know, um, not for you to be acting like that you are like that by default and you're just good by default. And oh my, this description said that I'm this way because I'm this type. No, you haven't done anything in real life to prove that it's true. You're just looking at stuff and it's saying that, But anyways, let me know y'all thoughts below. Thanks for watching.